Welcome to Sustainable Farm Insights, a sustainability programme brought to you by the Irish Farmers Journal and Glanbia, Ireland. The economic and environmental challenges facing Irish farmers is well known, and the aim of this programme is to help tackle these challenges and assist Irish farmers across all enterprises to adopt good management practices and new technologies as they drive to deliver economic and environmental sustainability on their farm.
My name is Andy Doyle and I'm Tillage Editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. I also look after the Sustainable Farm Insights programme. We're here today on the farm of Denis Large in North Tipperary, and we're just talking about his commercial farming business and what he is doing that is helping biodiversity around the farm.
You're on a mainly beef farm here with a certain amount of tillage. It's a suckler farm producing beef on the farm. We have about 150 suckler cows. All the progeny is sold as beef. At the moment we're running 3 Charlie bulls and 1 stabiliser bull on the farm. All the stock is killed, some steers at 24 months of age, the bulls under 16 months.
Denis, just in explaining the beef end of the business, you have Charlie and you have stabiliser there. Have you been able to get better performance and tighten up your stocking rate, etc. on the land?
Yes, as far as I'm concerned on this farm, we're breeding animals to be fed properly. There is no, like the time scale for the breeding situation is I want a calf per cow per year, but I also want a calf of such a weight and such a grade at a stage that the performance that I'm getting from the animal has to be very good. It's the only way I can stay in business. The longer the animal is on the farm, the more environmentally unfriendly he is. That's the situation. That's why we grow as much forage as we can on the farm. All the farm is run on a basis of either paddock grazing or block grazing. The rotation of the situation is we rotate grass and tillage in order to get maximum performance from the tillage and the grass. By doing that, we use less fertiliser, and by also doing that situation, we're able to recycle farmyard manure from the straw that's grown on the farm onto the tillage land. The slurry goes back out on all the grassland at certain times of the year, depending on the weather. One of the most important things you have to remember about slurry is a resource that we have on the farm after producing beef. It might be the only thing we have left money-wise, really, when it's all said and done. But if you use that properly, you can cut down your fertiliser use major.
Denis, just there you're describing the use of slurries and dungs in terms of a resource at the end of it. You explained how much of your total feed for your stock is produced on the farm. It sounds like a very, very sustainable system, as in it's kind of circular. Everything, the animals are going out, and almost everything else is coming from within. Do you have to purchase any inputs for the cattle in terms of feed?
The only real purchase that we have for the animals is a protein substitute, a protein, which is probably in the form of soybean meal that we have to purchase on the farm, because we're growing all the energy crops. We treat the grain when it comes off the combine is treated, and we roll it ourselves on the farm. And like the real problem, the real situation in this, like that you have to remember with a beef farm is very much reliant on a beef price, which we don't get. So you have to change, and what we can save in the cost of producing a kilo of beef is where I'm going to make my money. Like if I can grow a good crop of corn, treat it properly and feed it to the cattle, that's like I'm taking out all the other people out of the situation. Also, it's way more sustainable. The beef that's produced on this farm has a way lower carbon footprint and an environmentally friendly way than shipping meal straight across the world from one side to the other and then shoving back beef to different parts of the world.
And Denis, as you've explained the fact that you're growing a lot, what actually are you growing? You mentioned corn, I presume that to be spring barley?
Yes.
And what else?
On the farm we grow spring barley and fodder wheat. Just to let you know, roughly half the spring barley would go for seed grain to seed assembler, because we were able to change the rotation due to growing fodder wheat, so we have a break crop. Also, when the crops of corn are harvested and that, we sow a certain amount of forage rape, and a certain amount of the stubbles are left bare with just volunteer grass and that type sown on them for vegetation to try and hold the nutrients in the situation.
So you're able to use the slurry. That's, I'm going to guess, going mainly on the grassland. You're probably targeting the dung back onto the tillage ground, and it's significantly reducing your overall requirement for nitrogen. But for the nitrogen that you do use, is there anything, how do you manage it? Are you putting it out mainly in the spring? Well, you will be for cereals, but on the grassland. And what level of accuracy do you think you can get from the nitrogen application?
On this farm, 2 years ago, we purchased a GPS section control machine for spreading fertiliser. It saves a huge amount on time, diesel, and it's also got a major saving in fertiliser, because I know exactly what's going out. And my motto is put out little but often. And on the cereals, as far as the cereals is concerned, putting out, by using the farmyard manure on the cereal and tillage ground, if you like to call it, your usage of P and K drops drastically. So, and by having that type of a machine, you can be very accurate with what you're putting out. It puts it out, what you say it wants to put out, it will do it. So, and you can drop, we're probably down at least 10 to 20% in what you hear normal lads talking about, the amount of nitrogen that we have to spread, on tillage especially. And on the grazing ground, you're not spreading nitrogen every time you graze it. It could be every second or third time, but you're constantly spreading it from, let's say, the middle of February till early September.
So Catherine, you've heard Denis comment there about the fact that he's running a rotation with grass, spring barley and fodder beet. And some of the barley is for seed, but that's kind of irrelevant. Rotation in itself, having more crops about a farm, is that generally a good thing for biodiversity?
Well, Andy, diversity is brilliant for biodiversity. So a mixture is always good. Different things live in different crops. There's biodiversity everywhere in every crop, so the variety is absolutely brilliant. If you think back to long ago, the mixed farm, that's where a huge amount of biodiversity has been lost, because we've lost mixed farms. For example, the yellowhammer has gone out of the west of Ireland because of the smaller amount of tillage there. So, you know, even intensive tillage, intensive grassland, if they're mixed up in the landscape, it's really good.
And Catherine, one of the other things that Denis said that caught my ear, so as to speak, was he talked about using much lower amounts of nitrogen because of how he's handling his slurry and because how he's actually handling his nitrogen. And he's gone to GPS spreading with in the last 2 years with bout control, which means that he can tell the machine, I'm going to spread by a headland, and it automatically pulls it in at that time. Is that useful as a particular characteristic of a machine working on a farm?
I absolutely love it, Andy. The hedgerows, the watercourses and the field margins are the key linear biodiversity on intensive grassland or tillage farms. So the middle of the field is for producing the food, but let's leave the margins for biodiversity. And what's really important is then not to mess them up by adding nutrients. So the fertiliser, keeping the fertiliser and slurry out of the margins of the hedges, the watercourses and the grassy margins themselves is really, really important for biodiversity.
Denis commented that if he was, which he might have been in the past, throwing a lot of fertiliser out, as in very high-end pastures, that the first thing he would notice was that his animals would go grazing the ditches, because what they were getting in there was much more, well, they preferred it. And I guess that's part of the whole system of how biodiversity works.
Yes, and if you think about the roadside margins, which never get fertiliser or sprays, and that's where you see the diversity as you walk along a country road and you see the amount of things that's in it. And there's never the thistles or nettles or docks because there's no nutrients going in there. So that's what we would love to see in the fields, and that's what we will see on this farm because he's keeping the fertiliser out of the margins.
As you look around just this one field that we're standing in, we can see hedges and trees on the margins. Is there anything in particular that Denis could consider changing here that would be better for biodiversity, because he's wide open to doing things that make a difference? Most of them don't cost a lot of money, and he wants to be a good farmer and good for the environment, and to leave the farm in a better position than when he got it.
Well, I suppose the most important thing that Denis has is he has a relatively low average field size, less than 5 hectares. So that's a fantastic start. We have the structures in place. So what Denis can now concentrate on is improving the quality of them. So again, we talked about the margins, but for the hedges to increase the height slowly, little by little, to allow birds to nest, allow thorn trees grow up within the hedge. So just the hedgerow management can increase biodiversity hugely.
Thomas, we heard there what Denis is doing to improve biodiversity and overall sustainability on his farm, and he has everything very tight with very little nutrients or anything brought in to the farm. Farmers in general, what can they do? There are simple things that they can do that would make a difference to how the environment would see them as individuals and how they farm.
I think if we break down biodiversity and talk about some measures like hedgerow management and trees on the farm, I mean, for many farmers it mightn't be about planting more area of their land with trees, but maybe looking at their existing hedgerows, looking at the thickness and the depth and the breadth of it, and asking themselves, could they have a plan of increasing the area of their hedgerows, or even looking at is there space on the farm for other biodiversity. Even looking at things like, let's say, clover management for farmers. So all farmers we know now in derogation, when they're doing reseeding, they have to incorporate clover. You know, you look at that on top of farmers in Gloss who are doing this as well. So for many of us, when it comes to biodiversity, think about hedgerow management, think about incorporating clover, and ask ourselves, is there more of the same we could do, and could we increase the uptake and the rate of adoption of these measures? Because for many of us, we have the tools in our toolbox, and I think that then becomes a good news story for the farm, because we're sequestering carbon, and then it becomes a real opportunity then over time, and there's a bigger discussion, Andy, that you and I would have around getting the value of that carbon on a farm level. So we're not just looking at methane, but we're taking account of the good carbon that's sequestered and stored by our hedgerows, by our trees and by our soils. There's a good news story here, and I think I'm confident, based on the work I see farmers doing, that they're up for the biodiversity challenge and addressing the wider sustainability challenge.
And Thomas, one of the kind of common topics nowadays is biodiversity within the sward, which really means having more than one species in there. You heard Catherine say that diversity of plant, whether it be within a sward or within a region, gives rise to more biodiversity because different things feed on different things. How practical is it for farmers, intensive, good farmers, to build more diversity into their swards with or without having to reseed as part of that?
So there's going to be, if you like, a farm imperative and a farm drive to get better nutrient use, to get better nitrogen fixation, and I think on the basis of that there's going to have to be multi-species within the sward, and we're going to have to look at how we can manage our sward better, because we won't be able to get to use the same level of inputs that we have heretofore. And I think those that are incorporating clover, those that are using other species, are recognising and realising the value of the nitrogen that's been fixated, and also how they're reducing their fertiliser bills on the back of it. Because there's a real value here when you incorporate the learnings from it.
Thomas, Denis, Catherine, thank you very much. And in the Sustainable Farm Insights programme, our ultimate objective is to enhance the financial element of that sustainability. There will be things that we will have to do that may cost some money, but most of what lessons that can be learned and taken from it are about either saving on costs or increasing on output and using our cost base more effectively and more efficiently, with due respect for the environment and for all the species that live on it. Thomas, Catherine, Brian, thank you all very much. This video on the biodiversity element of sustainability is part of the Sustainable Farm Insights programme, which is a programme that's jointly operated by Glanbia and the Farmers Journal. In this particular video, we visited 3 farms and we saw commercial farming, which is the important thing. Commercial farming being operated in conjunction with a lot of natural biodiversity that exists around them. All farmers reported that they weren't doing anything much in particular. It was just part of their normal programme and they all felt the better for it. We heard one common comment coming from them all, which is the willingness and the wish to leave our land and our environment in better condition than we got it. And I just want to thank all of those 3 host farmers today, and also my guests for the conversation that we generated around that.